Hare Krishna. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Atha Sutta Uvacha. Atha Tam Sukhamasina. Upasinam Brihatshravaha. Devarshi Prahaviprasem. Minapani Smayam Niva.
Suta Goswami said, "Thus the sage amongst the god, Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the Brahmanas, Vedavyasa.
नारद उवाच पाराशर्य महाभागा भवतः कच्चिदात्मनः परितुष्यति शारीरा आत्मा मानस एव वा.
Addressing Vyasadeva, the son of Parasara, Narada inquired, "Are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of self-realization?"
जिज्ञासितं सुसम्पन्नम् अपि ते महदद्भुतं कृतवान् भारतं यस्त्वं सर्वात् परिबृंहितम्.
Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled, and there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic consequences elaborately explained.
जिज्ञासितम् अधीतं च ब्रह्म यत्तत् सनातनं तथापि शोचस्यत्मानम् अकृतार्थ इव प्रभो.
You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu?
व्यास उवाच अस्त्यैव मे सर्वमिदं त्रियोक्तं तथापि नात्मा परितुष्यते मे तन्मूलमव्यक्तमगधबोधं पृच्छामहे त्वात्मभावात्मभूतम्.
Sri Vyasadeva said, "All you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction. For you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one Brahma, who is self-born, without mundane father and mother."
स वै भवान् वेद समस्तगुह्यम् उपासितो यत् पुरुषः पुराण परावरेश मनसैव विश्वं सृजत्यवत्यति गुणैरसङ्गः.
My Lord, everything that is mysterious is known to you because you worship the creator and destroyer of the material world and the maintainer of the spiritual world, the original personality of Godhead, who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature.
त्वं पर्यटनार्क इव त्रिलोक्यम् अन्तेश्वरो वायुरेवात्मसाक्षी परावरे ब्रह्मणि परमतो व्रते स्नातस्य मे न्यूनमलं विचक्ष्वा.
Like the sun, your goodness can travel everywhere in the three worlds, and like the air, you can penetrate the internal region of everyone. As such, you are as good as the all-pervasive supersoul. Please therefore find out the deficiency in me, despite my being absorbed in transcendence under disciplinary regulations and vows.
भवत् श्रीनारद उवाच भवतानुदितप्रायं यशो भगवतो मलं येनैवासो न तुष्येत मन्ये तदर्शनमखिलम्.
Sri Narada said, You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless.
यथा धर्मादयश्चार्थैश्वर्यानुकीर्तिताः न तथा वासुदेवस्य महिमा ह्यानुवर्णिताः.
Although, great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles beginning with religious performances, you have not described the glories of the Supreme Personality Vasudeva.
न यद्वचश्चेत्पादं हरे यशो जगत्पवित्रं प्रगणित कहिचित् तद्वास्यं तीर्थम् ओशान्ति मानसा न यत्र हंसा निर्मन्त्युशिक्षिक्यः.
Those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows. Since all perfect persons are inhabitants of the transcendental abode, they do not derive any pleasure there.
तद्वाग्विसर्गो जज्जन्ताग्विप्लवो यस्मिन् प्रतिश्लोकमपत्यपि न मान्यनन्तस्य यशोऽङ्कितानि यत् शृण्वन्ति गायन्ति गृह्णन्ति सात्वः.
On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed towards bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest.
नैष्कर्म्यमप्यच्युतभाववर्जितं न शोभते ज्ञानमालं निरञ्जनं कुतः पुनः शाश्वतभद्रमीश्वरे न चार्पितं कर्म यदप्यकारणम्.
Knowledge of self realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature, if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord?
अथो महाभागभावानभोगदृक् शुचिश्रवः सत्यरतो धृताव्रतः उरुक्रमस्याखिलबन्धमुक्तये समाधिनानु स्मर्तार्पिचेष्टितम्.
O Vyasadeva, your vision is completely perfect. Your good fame is spotless. You are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness, and thus you can think of the pastimes of the Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage.
ततोऽन्यथा किञ्चिन्यदा विविक्षितः पृथग्धतस्तत् कृतरूपनामभिः न कहिचित् क्वापि च दुष्टिता मते लाभे तवाता हतनोर् इवास्पदम्.
Whatever you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord simply reacts with different forms, names, and results to agitate the mind, and as the wind agitates a boat which has no resting place.
जुगुप्सितं धर्मकृते निशाश्रितः स्वभावरक्तस्य महान् व्यतिक्रमः यद्वाक् यथोक्तधर्म इति तस्कृतो न मान्यते तस्य निवारणं जना.
The people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you have encouraged them in that way in the name of religion. This is verily condemned and is quite unreasonable. Because they are guided under your instructions, they will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions.
विचक्षणोऽस्यार्हति वेदितुं विभो अनन्तपारस्य निवृत्तितः सुखम् प्रवर्तमानस्य गुणैरनात्मन ततो भवान् दर्शय चेष्टितां विभो.
The Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not well situated due to material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization. By your goodness, through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord.
त्यक्त्वा स्वधर्मं चरणं भुजन् हरेर्भजन् पावको स्थापते तदा यदि यत्र भद्रम् आबोधमुष्य किं को वाथ आप्तो अभजतां स्वधर्मतः.
One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in the devotional service of the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage, yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything.
तस्यैव हेतो प्रयतेत कोविदो न लभ्यते यत् भ्रमतामुपर्यदा तल्लाभ्यते दुःखवादान्यता सुखं कालेन सर्वत्र गाभीरं हसा.
Persons who are actually intelligent and philosophically inclined should endeavor only for that purposeful and which is not obtainable even by wandering from the topmost planet Brahmaloka down to the lowest planet Patala. As far as happiness derived from sense enjoyment is concerned, it can be obtained automatically in course of time, just as in course of time we obtain miseries even though we do not desire them.
न वै जनो जातु कथाञ्चन व्रजेन् मुकुन्द सेव्यान् यावदङ्गसंसितं स्मरन् मुकुन्दाङ्गहृप गुहनं पुनर्विहातुमिच्छेन रसाग्रहों च.
My dear Vyasa, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, fruitive workers, etc. Because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of the Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again.
इदं हि विश्वं भगवान् निवेत्तरो जग यतो जगत्स्थाननिरोधसम्भव तद्धि स्वयं वेद भवांस्तथापि ते प्रदेशमात्रं भवतः प्रदर्शितम्. हरे कृष्ण.
The Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead is Himself this cosmos, and still He is aloof from it. From Him only has this cosmic manifestation emanated. In Him it rests, and upon Him it enters after annihilation. Your good self knows all about this. I have given only a synopsis. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Jyoti Mataji nicely recited the English, and Adi Devi Mataji, that was really nice. Your Sanskrit was superb, very fluent, and very nice. You pronounced it
Thank
so
you.
nicely. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, devotees. So let me just bring up the presentation for today. Second. Okay, so yeah, welcome all. We are continuing our reading from the Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 5. Today we're on verse 11. What we will do is we will recap a little bit where we are so far. So chapter 5 is entitled Narada's Instructions on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasadeva. Just give me 1 second, I'll just make sure he's muted. Yeah. So we're just in the early part of this chapter. So the chapter so far is like this. We have so far spoken about a few things. Let's see. So verses 1 to 7, they speak about Narada's inquiries. Narad is asking Vyasadeva why he seems despondent, and then Vyasadeva's response. So, and then from 8 to 22, a big section, it speaks about, then Narada reveals the importance of describing Krishna's pastimes. So 1 to 4 spoke about Vyasadeva's work and why is it despondent. 5 and 6 spoke about Vyasadeva saying that, yes, I've done all this, but I still feel despondent. Maybe you can tell me why. And then 8 and 9, Narada spoke about 2 defects about all the works that Vyasadeva had done so far. Can anybody remember that? 8 and 9 spoke about why he was feeling despondent. Did somebody mention that? 2 reasons that Narad Muni mentioned. Anybody? So the first reason was, oh yeah, go on.
Oh yeah, was it Prabhuji that he said that you did not glorify the?
Very good, very good. Yes, the name is iPad. What is your name, Mataji?
Kanta.
Sorry?
Kantam.
Yes, Santa Mataji, thank you. Yes, the first reason was that it did not sufficiently glorify the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the second reason, anybody? The second reason was that there was overemphasis on the 4 Purusharthas. Dharma, Moksha, Kama.
Oh, yeah, Dharma.
Yeah. So the 4 Purusharthas, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. This is what Vyasadeva focused on, and not much on the Supreme Lord's pastimes. This was the 8 and 9. And number 10, yesterday, who was it the speaker yesterday? I listened to the class, I better forget the name.
Shyam Haridas.
Shyam Hari Prabhu, yes. Shyam Hari Prabhu, he was speaking about yesterday we spoke about the materialistic literature. There's so much around, things that we don't really need, just for sense gratification. And this includes digital media nowadays, of course. And he gave a nice breakdown of how much time everybody is wasting on digital media nowadays. And so that's all. It is described that this type of literature, whether on paper or digital, is like a place of pilgrimage for crows. So the crows assemble where there is rubbish. So this is what Narad Muni says. All that literature that doesn't glorify the Lord is like that. So now we come to today's verse, and like yesterday, he spoke about the materialistic literature. Today, he will speak about the spiritual literature. So we'll start today's verse. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 5, text 11. Tadvag visargo janatag viplavo yasmin pratishlokamabhadvatyatapi namanyanantasya yashon kitaniya shunvanti gayanti grinanti sadhava. Translation, Sri Prabhupada Ki Jai. On the other hand, that literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, pastimes, etc., of the unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation, full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. But beautiful verse, so nicely, so eloquently translated by Sri Prabhupada. He's using amazing phrases like bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. That sentence says everything about the current civilization, doesn't it? We need a revolution in our life, and we're all living impious lives. And why is it that? Because we've all been misdirected by everything that's going on around us. We just like sheep, we're just following the herd. And Prabhupada uses the verse often in his lectures, chewing the chewed. So we are chewing the chewed and just not getting any taste for it, but still we're not realizing the fault of our path. Very nice verse. This verse actually in the preface of Srimad Bhagavatam, Sri Prabhupada mentioned this. He's writing in the preface, he says, I must admit my frailties, he's saying, in presenting Srimad Bhagavatam, because he is being very humble. As we know, Sri Prabhupada's purports and the translations are the best in the world, and we these translations have converted hundreds and thousands of lechas or Westerners into Vaishnavas. But still, taking a humble position, Sri Prabhupada is saying that there must be many mistakes in my presentation, but I hope that the people and the leaders of society will take strength from the message, the core message, rather than my mistakes. So Prabhupada is very humbly mentioned that in the preface, and he quotes this verse at that time, 1.5.11. So it's a very long purport. So I put it into 5 different pages. So what I request is 5 different devotees. I don't want to just name anybody, just unmute yourself and start reading. So I will put up the first page. So there's 5 of them. So you can anybody can unmute and start reading, please. Not all at once.
Can I read, Prabhuji?
Yes, please.
It is a qualification of a great thinkers to pick up the best even from the worst. It is said that the intelligent man should pick up nectar from a stalk of poison, should accept gold even from a filthy place, should accept a good and qualified wife even from an obscure family, and should accept a good lesson even from a man or from a teacher who comes from the untouchables. These are some of the ethical instructions of everyone in every place without exception. But a saint is far above the level of an ordinary man. He is always absorbed in glorifying the Supreme Lord because of broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord. And the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. While preparing this commentation on this particular stanza of Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a crisis before us. Our neighboring friend China has attacked the border of India with a militaristic spirit. We have particularly no business in the political field. Yet we see that previously there was both China and India, and both lived peacefully for centuries without ill feeling. The reason is that they lived those days in an atmosphere of God consciousness, and every country over the surface of the world was God fearing, pure hearted, and simple, and there was no question of political diplomacy.
Thank you,
The-
Seva Mataji. Thank you so much.
Can I
Hare Krishna.
read it, Prabhuji?
Yes, please. Next, please. Go ahead, please. Shipper Mataji.
There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land which is not very suitable for habitation, and certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. Uh, but due to the age of a quarrel colleague, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. There is no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land which is not very suitable for habitation. And certainly there is no cause for fighting on this issue. But due to the age of, age of quarrel, Koli, which we have discussed, there is always a chance of quarrel on slight provocation. This is due not to the issue in question, but to the polluted atmosphere of this age. Systematically, uh, there is propaganda by a section of people to stop glorification of the name and fame of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, there is a great need for disseminating the message of Srimad Bhagavatam all over the world. It is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in the world. Because India has failed in her duty by neglecting this responsible work, there is so much quarrel and travel all over the world. We are confident that if the transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam is received by only by the leading men of the world, certainly there will be a change of heart, and naturally the people in general will follow them. The mass of people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change of heart of the leaders only, certainly there will be a radical change in the atmosphere of the world. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Shipper Mataji. Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu, you muted. Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, if you want, I can read
Yes,
the
please.
third
Yeah.
page.
Go on, please. Yeah.
We know that our honest attempt to present this great literature conveying transcendental messages for reviving the God consciousness of the people in general and re-spiritualizing the world atmosphere is fraught with many difficulties. Or presenting this matter in adequate language, especially a foreign language, will certainly fail. And there will be so many literary discrepancies despite our honest attempt to present it in the proper way. But we are sure that with all our faults in this connection, the seriousness of the subject matter will be taken into consideration, and the leaders of society will still accept this due to its being an honest attempt to glorify the Almighty Lord. When there is fire in a house, the inmates of the house go out to get help from the neighbors who may be foreigners. And yet, without knowing the language, the victims of the fire express themselves, and the neighbors understand the need. even though not expressed in the same language. The same spirit of cooperation is needed to broadcast this transcendental message of the Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the polluted atmosphere of the world. After all, it is a technical science of spiritual values, and thus we are concerned with the techniques and not with the language. If the techniques of this great literature are understood by the people of the world, there will be success. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Chaitanya Prabhu. Thank you. Fourth page, please, somebody.
I can read, Prabhuji.
Yes, Sundari Mataji, please.
Hare Krishna. Prabhupada ki jai. When there are too many materialistic activities by the people in general all over the world, there is no wonder that a person or a nation attacks another person or nation on slight provocation. That is the rule of this age of Kali or quarrel. The atmosphere is already polluted with corruption of all description, and everyone knows it well. There are so many unwanted literatures full of materialistic ideas of sense gratification. In many countries, there are bodies appointed by the state to detect and censor absence literature. This means that neither the government nor the responsible leaders of the public want such literature. Yet it is in the marketplace because the people want it for sense gratification. The people in general want to read, that is natural instinct. But because their minds are polluted, they want such literatures. Under the circumstances, the transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam will not only diminish the activities of the corrupt mind of the people in general, but also it will supply food for their hankering after reading some interesting literature. In the beginning, they may not like it because one suffering from jaundice is reluctant to take sugar candy. But we should know that the sugar candy is only remedied for jaundice. Similarly, let there be systematic propaganda for popularizing reading of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, which will act like a sugar candy for the jaundice-like condition of sense gratification. When men have a taste for this literature, the other literatures which are catering poison to society will then automatically cease. We are sure, therefore, that everyone in human society will welcome Srimad Bhagavatam, even though it is now presented with so many faults, but it is recommended by Shri Narada, who has very kindly appeared in this chapter. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Sundari Mataji. And all the other readers, thank you so much. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Papitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kada Mahyam Tadati Swapadantikam Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swami Niti Namine Snikta Cheta Supraneta Vagvinam Charasapitam Prabhupada Gata Prana Nami Bhakti Charu Phulam Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadita Shate Deshatari Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. I cut the prayer short because we're running out of time already. It's such a long purport. So we'll dive straight into the purport. As we usually do, I'll just pick on, there's a lot of points in this purport, very, very powerful purport. We'll just pick on a few key points that came to my mind and take it from there. So this, the very purport starts the purport with, it is a qualification of the great thinkers to pick up the best even from the worst. So Prabhupada is speaking about literature here, of course, as we know, he's talking about the fact that even if there's literature with mistakes, then a great thinker will ignore the mistakes and focus on the core message and gain a lot from there. But what this particular sentence has got me thinking about how Prabhupada, who was a great preacher, a great thinker, how he picked up the best from the worst in terms of the early devotees, how he went to USA, and how this is like one of the earliest pictures I could find of Sri Prabhupada. And you can see he's there. This is the early days. He's sitting in this park. He's surrounded by these hippies. They don't really know what's going on. They're there. They're probably high on some drug, bringing their instruments, and they're just, because the Prabhupada is singing, they're just singing along. They don't even know what they're singing. But Prabhupada picked from this bunch of really degraded persons. He picked the souls, and they all got attracted to this wonderful soul that Prabhupada was. And he transformed them, as we know. This verse speaks about bringing about a transformation, a revolution. Truly, this was a revolution that happened at that time when Prabhupada was there. Prabhupada was in the USA in 1960. He got there in 1965, around September time, and ISKCON was established in 1966. So in those early days, that was a time when the hippie era was very ripe and it was very rampant. All the youngsters were rejecting the society as it was in USA at the time, and they were looking for an alternate way of life and smoking, drinking, and general sort of really bad behavior. That's what everybody was in. And in the midst of this arrives our dear Srila Prabhupada. Yeah, and it seems like, when you think about it from the outset, if somebody's looking at a scenario, we would think there's no way that Prabhupada is going to connect with these people, because these people, fundamentally, they were rejecting anybody who was older than 34 years old. To them was a reject. All these youngsters, they were between 16 and 30, and for them, everything that the older generation of the USA was doing was useless. And they were disenchanted because of this war in Vietnam and all the mistakes that the government were making. So they were in that mood. And for them then to connect with somebody who was almost 70 years old is unthinkable. But you can see there was Krishna's hand there, right? Without that, nothing would be possible. So these people were, in the beginning, the devotees who were following Prabhupada, even the first devotees who started to help him. There was incidents where, for example, a devotee who later on became to be named as Shyam Sundar Prabhu. He was an expert carpenter. So Prabhupada expertly was using everybody's, the expertise in Krishna's service. And he asked Shyam Sundar Prabhu to carve deities of Jagannath, Baldev, and Subhadra. And so one time when Prabhupada went to check in on what was going on in the workshop, so he was there. There was Shyam Sundar Prabhu carving the deity of Jagannath, and he is smoking at the same time, right? And now imagine how all these devotees, now they are in knowledge. They would be very, very ashamed of what was going on. But at that time, they were completely ignorant. They were smoking, and when Prabhupada entered the room, he had a cigarette in one hand, and Prabhupada saw the packet of cigarette was lying on Jagannath's head. Can you imagine? Complete, I wouldn't say disrespect, but because complete ignorance of what they were doing and how they were managing it. And Prabhupada, it is said that Prabhupada actually just lifted his cane, and he flicked that cigarette packet off the head of Jagannath, Lord Jagannath, and he just said one sentence to Shyam Sundar. He said, "Don't let this 2-inch of tobacco come between you and the Lord." And that was it. And after that day, Shyam Sundar Prabhu quit smoking. Similarly, there was one time, I forget the name of the Mataji, but maybe it was Jamuna Mataji or one of the early devotees who was helping Prabhupada cook. And while Prabhupada was in the next room and she was cooking, and she shouts from the kitchen, "Swamiji, is it okay if I smoke while I'm cooking?" So this is the level these people were at, right? They were cooking for Prabhupada or the deities, and they thought it was okay to have a cigarette in the meantime. This is the level of devotees. This is where Prabhupada picked them up from, and this is where they ended up, right? This in the end, just after a few months, they were all devotees and they were dressed properly. They'd given up all the bad habits, and completely transformed, revolutionized. So this is an effect, and this is how a great thinker, a great devotee can make this kind of difference. Prabhupada says, he said, I've converted them from hippies to happies. Because as hippies, they thought they were happy, but they were just high most of the time. And as soon as the effect wore off, they were depressed again. And they would just go for the next joint or the next drink or whatever they were doing. So Prabhupada often says that a swan, just like a swan, has the ability to separate milk from a mixture of milk and water. Similarly, a great personality can actually separate the good souls from the bad souls. It's not that everybody who was there joined, but Prabhupada was able to focus and nurture these wonderful souls who were really fallen. Prabhupada then says, by broadcasting the holy name and fame of the Supreme Lord, the polluted atmosphere of the world will change. And as a result of propagating the transcendental literature like Srimad Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, people will become sane in their transactions. So it's very apt, this verse that we're discussing Bhagavatam today, because we are in the middle of the Bhadra campaign. And this message is something that we should take on board ourselves and also explain to others that by inviting the Bhagavatam to your homes, you are giving yourself and your family and the friends a chance to make a huge change in our life and our fortunes, spiritual fortunes. So devotees, I'm sure everybody is taking part in the Bhadra campaign, but if you're not, please get in touch with us. Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu is there. He's very active in that field as well. So let's try and put our hands together and try and get Srimad Bhagavatam distributed as far and wide as possible. So in terms of Bhagavatam, the glories of Bhagavatam, I was thinking about the glorification by Srila Sanatana Goswami in his Krishna Leela Stava. Beautiful verses he sings about glorification of Bhagavatam. Sarva Sastra Bipiyusha Sarva Vedaika Satfala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikpada. So Sarva Sastra Bipiyusha, it's a nectar. It is the nectar churned from all the ocean of Vedic scriptures. Sarva Vedaika Satfala, it is like the ripened fruit of all the Vedic literature. Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya, it is the jewel of spiritual conclusions. It's a philosophical conclusion. Sarva Lokaika Drikpada, giving vision to the blinded civilization of this world. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu, Kali Dvanta Doditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita, Kali Dvantodit Aditya. So it is, you are like this. Bhagavatam is like the sun that has arisen to dispel the darkness of Kali. And it is Lord Krishna himself who has actually returned amongst us. Sri Krishna Parivartita. Then Paramananda Pathaya Prema Vash Aksharayate Sarvada Sarvata Sevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. So Paramananda. So it gives us a transcendental bliss. Paramananda Pathaya. By reading it, we get transcendental bliss. Prema Vash Aksharayate. Akshara means every word, every syllable. So every syllable of the Bhagavatam, it is like raining. Prema Vasha, raining. Syllables is like raindrops full of pure love. Sarvada Sarva Sevaya, everybody should be engaged in serving you. And Shri Krishna Namastume, from our obeisances to you. Sorry, back there. Asadu saduta dayin ati nichota takara taraka na hana muncha kadachen mam prem na hit kantayo fruta sfura. So asadu saduta dayin. So like this particular this sentence is saying that is actually it creates it turns asadu. So non-devotees you are you converting them into devotees. So giving saintliness to the unsaintly. You are lifting them up from their lowest position. Hana muncha gadachin mam, never leave me, please, and be established. Premna hit kantayo hृदय, please remain established within my heart and my throat. So this is the prayer, wonderful prayers by Sanatana Goswami. So we remember these prayers when we try and distribute Srimad Bhagavatam. Prabhupada then says, it is the duty of every responsible Indian to broadcast a transcendental message of Srimad Bhagavatam throughout the world, to do all the supermost good, as well as to bring about the desired peace in this world. So every Indian is mentioned here because Indians are fortunate to have been brought up with this message right from childhood. We hear about Krishna Katha right from our childhood. So we must utilize the good fortune of our birth to, first of all, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the CC 941 says, does anybody know this verse? Talking about people born in India should spread this message. Anybody know this verse? Famous verse.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Shall I
Yes.
try? I don't know. A bit I know. Bharat Barshe Janmo Holo Jar, Janmo Sarthak Karo, Karo Paropkar. Something like that.
Perfect. Thank you. I didn't see your name there. Who spoke there? Rupamoya. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Translation goes, one who has taken his birth as a human being in the land of India, Bharatavarsha, should make his life successful and work for the benefit of all other people, which means we must establish ourselves in Krishna consciousness first, and once we are on the boat, pull everybody else on board. Prabhupada says, in this particular purport, he's saying that because India has failed to do her duty like this, to propagate its rich sort of spiritual message to the Western world, because of that, there is so much quarrel and trouble all over the world. Is blaming India. India is, rather than focus on its spirituality, India went about, begging for technical knowledge from the Western world and started to focus on that. And they ignored the spirituality. And Prabhupada says this is why there's so much rife trouble in the world. I've got part of the purport there, but I think we're running out of time, so we focus on the main verses. So mass of people in general are tools in the hands of the modern politicians and leaders of the people. If there is a change in the heart of leaders only, certainly there will be radical change in the atmosphere. So once the leaders take on the right path, the people in general will follow. That is generally the rule, right? People will follow the leaders. Leaders in this sense, we can speak about the politicians initially, of course, because they will make a difference. But even other prominent people in society, like sports people, famous artists, famous actors, whoever we speak about, if those people start taking the right path, others will follow. So in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, text 21, it speaks about this, about people following the leaders. Again, can somebody recite the verse? Yad acharati shreshtas tatat evetara jana. Sayyat pramanam kurute lokastad anuvartate. There, Krishna is saying, whatever action a great man performs, common men follow. And whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. So literally, Prabhupada, again, in this purport, is saying that people in general, they require a leader. And if the leader is behaving properly, then everybody else will follow. So one who teaches is called Acharya, Prabhupada says here. Acharya is derived from achar. Achar means behavior. So acharya is somebody who's preaching by his behavior, not just book knowledge. Prabhupada then talks about the fact that people in general, they want to read. So wanting to read is a natural instinct, Prabhupada says. But because their minds, because generally people's minds are so polluted, they then focus on literature which is not beneficial to them. And particularly Prabhupada refers to in the purport to obscene literature. So then he says, when men have a taste of this literature when men have taste for this literature, the other literatures which are catering poison to society will then automatically cease. Once again, talking about Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. Once we have the taste for this, we don't want to read. I don't remember the last time I touched a novel. I used to love to read when I used to travel. I did a lot of traveling when I was in my business, constantly doing long distance journeys. So on the plane, I would take a novel and I would read. But since I took the Krishna consciousness, I don't remember touching a novel because we have so much better things to read now. So again, looking at whenever I'm teaching, I was looking at different places in the Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, Chaitanya Charitamrita, where I can connect and give praman to what we're speaking about. So the praman of this particular talking about higher taste, 259. Nice verse. Anybody know this? Prabhupada quotes it quite often, especially the last line. So Vishaya Vinivartante Niraharasya Dehina Rasavarjam Rasopyasya Param Drishva Nivartate. Param Drishva Nivartate. That's what Prabhupada quote. Here it says, though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense enjoyment remains. So taste for sense object remains. But seizing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste is fixed in consciousness. So we need to give the higher taste of reading the Bhagavatam to the people so that they will stop reading the rubbish literature and focus their lives in Krishna consciousness. Running out of time, devotees, let's see if, again, I'll ignore the thing, I'll go to the purport. Oh, very interesting. Prabhupada actually, early on in the purport, picks on this war between India and China. And he's talking that, as he says, there's no cause of quarrel between the two countries, China and India, over land. The land is actually not suitable for habitation. And certainly there is no cause of fighting on this issue. But due to the age of quarrel in Kali, which we have discussed, there's always chance of quarrel, and just by a slight provocation. So here, again, this age of Kali is known as age of quarrel. And in the first canto, first chapter, text 10, it is the sages of Naimisharanya speaking to Sutta Goswami, talking about the state of the people in age of Kali. It says, Prayana alpayusha sabhya kalav asmin yuge jana manda sum manda matayo manda bhagya hyupartita. Says, oh learned one, addressing Sutta Goswami, they're saying, in this age, in this iron age of Kali, men almost always have but short lives. They are quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, unlucky, and above all, always disturbed. So you can see we can relate, all of us can relate to all these qualities. These are the qualities of people in Kali Yuga. And the only way that we please.
Prabhuji, thank you so much. Welcome back. We haven't seen you for a long time. We are missing your association.
Thank you, Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu. I was missing all of you too. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and a lovely class. So true. Before we came to Krishna consciousness, we were reading all sorts of literatures, which really didn't help at all. But now that we have the spotlight literature with us, the Srimad Bhagavatam, there's no need for any other thing.
Totally, absolutely. Thank you, Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu. Anybody else? Any comments, questions? If not, we can call it a day. Somebody wants to say something?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful class.
Jyoti Mataji, thank you so much for your appreciation and encouragement. Thank you. So hopefully I can continue. I've still got a lot happening with all the other different services, but I've said to Divina Prabhu that I'll try and do Thursdays if I can, most of the time. But
That'd be very good.
Krishna's mercy, I can carry on doing this.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you.
Thank you, Sri.
Dandavat pranam. Hare Krishna.
Prabhuji, can I ask a question?
Sure, Harsha Mataji, go on, please.
Yeah, I just thought what you just said, the last comment was in the age of Kali Yuga, people are lazy and misguided and quarrelsome. So if that is already determined for the Kali Yuga, so how can people change that? Because it's already said that this is what people will be like.
Yes. Yeah, nice point, Harsha. Then let me just try to explain. So that verse says prayena alpa yusha. So praya means almost all, so mostly, right?
Okay.
So
Yeah.
mostly all people. But the point is, there are, of course, people who get exposed to spiritual literature and who take it seriously. They will be saved from these qualities. And the more we propagate Prabhupada's books, the more we try and make devotees, the more we make people turn their heads towards spirituality and towards Krishna, that much more we will get people to move away from their really sinful lives. And this is the point that we're trying to make. So although this age of Kali, as we all know, is gradually going to degrade, we are just in the beginning. As we know, the duration of the age of Kali is 432,000 years. And we are just in the first 5,000 years. We've just done about just over 5,000 years. And you can see what the state is of the world right now. And you imagine how it's going to be later on in this age of Kali. So, but Prabhupada has made, and I think the prediction was made by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that for the next 10,000 years at least, the Krishna consciousness will flourish. You know, it will eventually go down, but like everything else, nothing goes in a straight line. It's going to be up and down, up and down, up and down. So there will be a rise of about 10,000 years where the Krishna consciousness will flourish. And all of us who have the good fortune to be connected to this movement, we can take advantage of this and we can make our life successful and actually get out of this cycle of birth and death and go back to the spiritual world where we belong. Because if we don't do this, Harsha Mataji and everybody else, if we don't do this and we keep coming back in the cycle of birth and death, you imagine how after a few lifetimes, when we are here after 2, 3, 4,000 years, how the condition of this life will be. It will be unlivable. So this is why we have this opportunity in this period to get out of this, make our life successful.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Nicely explained.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Charlotte Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Tanod Pranams. I just had a question that, so for the Janmashtami, is there any service opportunity for all of us Chad, group of audience devotees?
Sure. Of course, there's lots of services, and one big service that we're doing is this time we have a tent, book distribution tank. So anybody who want to help out, you can please connect with either Chandra Chaitanya Prabhu or Dipina Prabhu to help there to try and distribute books from there. That's going to be our main service. So you can help there. But do realize that you do need to have taken training. Shalaja Mataji, have you done your training?
Unfortunately, no, Prabhuji. I stay a bit remote to the temples, so I haven't had any trainings yet.
Do you plan to come over for the 2 days?
Yes, Prabhuji. I'm actually planning to come a couple of more days if that is going to be helpful. So I'm very happy to do that.
The problem would be that if you haven't got, because it's not just the temple rule, but it's the local authority rule that all volunteers must have had the training. So we've had several trainings done already, and I think the last one was done last week or something. But I'm sure they may lay on some extra one towards nearer the time. So keep an eye open. If you can do the training, then you can help out for sure.
Okay, where can I get the updates, Prabhuji? Where can I track that?
Yeah, so normally on all the groups, they put out the information about the training. So I suppose anybody on this group, if you do hear about any training sessions, you could please put it on our group or let Shalaja Mataji know. If I do hear of it, I will let you know.
Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Much helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Let me see if there's any questions on the chat.
Prabhuji, just another question, if I can ask, if that's okay.
Please, yes.
So we being the devotees, we always think that we are the soul and we are not this body. But just wondering, we do have our material life anyway. We have this body, which we think is mine. We will have to think it's mine. We have to take care of ourselves, and we will have to have our families, and we'll have to have our own stuff. Basically, this my spouse, my kids, my family, my father, my mother, and then my job, my life, etc. Is it wrong that we think that way for the sake of doing it? We all have our material duties. We also have our needs and our wants, even otherwise.
Sure.
Is that wrong, or how is it?
No, it's absolutely fine. It's like this, we have a human life, we got the human body, so we have the responsibilities, as you mentioned, with the family and everything else. So it is said, Sutta Prabhu, he is now Swayam Bhagwan Keshav Prabhu. He explained quite often that our life has to be on two tracks, like a train, like a railway track, right? So we have the Swadharma, which is our dharma with our family and everything else, and we have a Sanatan Dharma. So we need to run both side by side. We cannot ignore our Swadharma because that would be irresponsible. We can't just say that I'm now going to focus purely on my spirituality. I don't care for my parents or my children and all that. So that would not be right. That'd be irresponsible. We all have to carry on with our Swadharma. But the point is that our Sanatan Dharma, which most people ignore, we must carry on. Sanatan Dharma is this spirituality. So we must nurture our spirituality side by side, and then not just leave it as that. As we progress in life, as we get older, as our responsibilities diminish, right? Because when you're younger, we got young children, we got a lot more responsibilities. But even then, we still must make sure we find time for spirituality. But as we get older and children get older, they don't need that much nurturing. Even financially, maybe we are more stable. We don't need to work so hard, and maybe we have part-time work or even retired. At that time, we should be then focusing more and more on our spirituality. Idea being that by the time we get to 50, 55, 60, we should be almost 90% on spiritual, on Sanatan Dharma rather than Swadharma. And this way, by the time we come to the end of our life, we have some hope that we will be thinking about Krishna at the time of death.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhuji. Wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Pranam, Prabhupada.
Yes, Prabhu, Hare Krishna.
Lovely having you back again, Prabhuji. We missed you a lot. So thank you for a wonderful class.
Thank you so much. Thank
You
you.
picked up a very difficult verse with a long purport. So
yeah. But I do like this verse. This verse I actually learned during my Bhakti Bible class, and I recite it on my own quite often because I think it's very encouraging. And when I relate it to not just books and writing, I relate it to my preaching as well, because my preaching will be full of faults. But I always hope that people will actually take the core message rather than the mistakes I make. So this verse is quite close to my heart.
may I add to your wonderful explanation about Grihas and Grihamedis?
Yes.
Prabhupada very, very nicely the difference between Grihamedi and a Grihastha. Grihamedi is in the material world for his sense gratification. A Grihastha carries on exactly the same duties, does exactly everything that a materialistic person does, but puts Krishna at the center and does it for Krishna's pleasure. It's such a nice, simple explanation, but it transforms the entire meaning of what Grihastha means, isn't it? It's perfect.
Exactly. So, it's not that we're going to change our activities. We have to just change our consciousness. That is the thing. So yes, from Grihamedi, we need to become Grihasthas. Yeah, thank you so much, Anish, for so nicely explained. Okay. So I don't think there's any more questions on the chat box. And we're almost 5 to 9, so we will close here. Thank you all so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Thank you. Hare Krishna.